Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we plunge into a stack of your sources to unearth surprising insights and really help you cut through the noise to understand what matters. Today, we're tackling a masterpiece that still burns with urgency decades after its publication. We're engaging with the fierce, prophetic, and deeply loving voice of James Baldwin in his seminal work, The Fire Next Time. This isn't just a book, it's an experience, a really raw and powerful examination of the American soul.
Right. That's absolutely right. It's incredibly potent stuff. This deep dive centers on a profound question that Baldwin wrestled with throughout his life, one that is as relevant now as it was then. How is the struggle for social justice intrinsically a spiritual struggle? Baldwin compellingly argues that racial division isn't just a political or economic problem that, you can just solve with policy. It's a profound crisis of the American soul, a deep spiritual sickness that kind of pervades individuals and institutions alike. Our mission today is to explore his searing critique of both American Christianity and the Nation of Islam, dissecting why he found them wanting, and to understand his radical argument for a revolutionary kind of love, a love he believed could truly transcend racial divisions and heal the nation. He offers a vision of liberation that demands an internal reckoning, you see, not just external reforms.
Yeah, that internal piece is key. And to help us navigate this incredibly powerful text, our primary source material for today is, of course, Baldwin's The Fire Next Time. But to truly appreciate the depth and breadth of his vision, we'll be weaving in perspectives from, a rich tapestry of diverse spiritual and philosophical texts. Think of it as a cross-cultural conversation with Baldwin right at the center. We'll be drawing from ancient Hindu scriptures like the Bhagavad Gita to modern reflections on love from Marianne Williamson and Eric Fromm, indigenous wisdom found in works like Black Elk Speaks and Braiding Sweetgrass, and Christian mysticism from texts such as Theologia Germanica and The Cloud of Unknowing. You'll discover how Baldwin's insights into human nature and the spiritual path resonate across these traditions, proving that his message about faith, identity, and liberation remains incredibly relevant. So let's unpack this, really feel the intellectual and emotional weight of it, and truly understand The Fire Next Time. 1-1. The Fire Next Time. Baldwin's prophetic vision for America.
Okay, let's really lean into that title first, because The Fire Next Time is just so evocative, so loaded with meaning. Baldwin himself prefaces the book with the epigraph, God gave Noah the rainbow sign. No more water, the fire next time. It's a quote that just immediately grabs you and sets such a serious, almost apocalyptic tone, doesn't it? What's he trying to tell us right from the start with that?
He absolutely is. I mean, talk about setting the stage. What Baldwin is doing here is consciously drawing on a very specific spiritual and prophetic tradition. This isn't just a casual warning. It's a direct reference to a vision of impending judgment and drastic transformative change. If you recall the biblical story of Noah, right? The flood was God's way of purging the world of its sins. The rainbow was the sign, the promise that there would be no more water. But this spiritual suggests a new form of reckoning is coming, the fire next time. For Baldwin, this signals that the time for incremental change or, polite requests for equality is over. Done. He's telling us that the consequences of past errors and continued injustice have accumulated to a point where a complete overhaul, the fundamental restructuring of society, is not just possible, but inevitable. It's a call to profound self-examination for the entire nation. Seriously deep.
So this fire for Baldwin, it's not necessarily literal destruction in the sense of of physical apocalypse, but something much deeper, like a purifying force that will reshape everything.
Precisely. Yeah, not just flames and brimstone in the conventional sense. For Baldwin, the fire represents a purifying, undeniable force and intense spiritual and moral reckoning that will expose long-hidden truths and demand a complete restructuring of societal and individual consciousness. It really cuts deep. It suggests a finality, a point of no return if fundamental changes aren't made. The consequences of continuing down the path of racial injustice, of self-deception and moral cowardice are so profound that they necessitate a complete spiritual and moral cleansing. It's a call to wake up, collectively and individually before those flames consume us in a less redemptive way. And, to illustrate this universal theme of accountability that transcends specific religious traditions, consider the Quran's descriptions of the day of truth and imminent torment. It depicts a day when man shall behold what his hands had once wrought, and when the blasphemer shall cry out, "If only I had been turned to dust." That powerful imagery reinforces the spiritual theme of a reckoning for collective and individual actions, a universal law of cause and effect playing out on a grand, undeniable scale. It's about facing the truth of our deeds, really.
Wow. And what's truly revolutionary about this, for me anyway, is how Baldwin argues that this fire isn't solely about Black liberation. It's also, fundamentally, a deep-seated crisis within white America. He writes, they have had to believe for many years, and for innumerable reasons, that black men are inferior to white men. Many of them indeed know better, but people find it very difficult to act on what they know. To act is to be committed, and to be committed is to be in danger. He's really getting at the profound psychological costs and the moral dilemma of maintaining this illusion, this inherited lie.
He really is. That's such a crucial point. He suggests that the real danger for most white Americans isn't just a change in social order or a shift in power dynamics, but something far more existential: the loss of their identity. It cuts right to the core of the self. And he uses this incredible analogy to explain just how unsettling this is, right? Try to imagine how you would feel if you woke up one morning to find the sun shining and all the stars aflame. You would be frightened because it is out of the order of nature. Any upheaval in the universe is terrifying because it so profoundly attacks one's sense of one's own reality. Then he brings it home with this chilling conclusion. Well, the black man has functioned in the white man's world as a fixed star, as an immovable pillar, and as he moves out of his place, heaven and earth are shaken to their foundations.
It's an almost cosmic way to frame the profound fear of change. Just stunning imagery.
It is stunning because this highlights the profound psychological dependence on a racial hierarchy that many white Americans didn't even realize they had. It was just the air they breathed. The fixed star metaphor brilliantly illustrates how white identity was, in many ways, constructed and maintained upon the subjugation and perceived otherness of black people. It needed that contrast. The fear of losing this fabricated identity, the sense of innate superiority or an unquestioned place at the top of a social hierarchy, is what prevents many from acknowledging the reality of injustice. They cannot see the truth because their very self-concept, their entire universe, relies on this false construct. If the fixed star moves, their understanding of themselves and their place in the world is shattered. It's terrifying for them. To grasp this more deeply, we can connect it to Charles Taylor's concept of the buffered self from his important work, Our Secular Age. Have you encountered that?
Vaguely, remind me.
Sure. So to explain it simply, Taylor describes the buffered self as one that sees itself as invulnerable, as master of the meaning of things for it. Imagine building this protective shell around your identity, making you feel completely secure and in charge of your own reality, safe inside.
Okay, hate that.
Baldwin's genius is showing us how, for many white Americans, that carefully constructed invulnerability is based on a false reality, a reality where the black man is a fixed star in a rigid hierarchy. The disruption of that racial hierarchy, therefore, shatters this buffered self, revealing a deep vulnerability and existential fear beneath the surface. This insight transforms the struggle for social justice from merely a political or economic battle into an inner spiritual battle against deeply ingrained self-deception and the comfortable fictions we tell ourselves about who we are and our place in the world. It's about confronting one's own constructed reality. It's heavy stuff.
It really is. So given this deep-seated fear and the existential crisis Baldwin describes within white America, how does he propose we actually move forward? Because it can feel quite paralyzing, you know. He offers a truly radical redefinition of integration, and it's likely not what you might expect, he states. And if the word integration means anything, this is what it means: that we, with love, shall force our brothers to see themselves as they are, to cease fleeing from reality and begin to change it. That word force, it's such an active, almost aggressive form of love. It really challenges our common understanding of what love entails in this context.
It does, and that force is precisely the point. He chose that word carefully, I think. This isn't about assimilation into a flawed system or simply extending an invitation for people to change their minds. Come on over. No. Baldwin is calling for a mutual, often uncomfortable confrontation with truth, driven by a very particular revolutionary kind of love. It's a challenge to both black and white Americans to evolve beyond their current limited realities, to shed the illusions that hold them captive. The phrase, force our brothers to see themselves as they are, implies a difficult, uncomfortable process, not a gentle suggestion. It's not easy. It's a tough love, demanding immense courage and a willingness to dismantle false narratives, both individual and collective. This directly connects to his later idea of love not as infantile American happiness, that kind of naive, superficial sentiment, but as quest and daring and growth. It's not a fluffy, sentimental emotion, but a rigorous, transformative practice that requires deep engagement and a willingness to be uncomfortable.
That's a crucial distinction. This love isn't passive, it's profoundly active. This concept of love taking a stand is something we see echoed by Marianne Williamson, who famously says, "Love is not neutral, it takes a stand. It is a commitment to the attainment of the conditions of peace for everyone involved in a situation. It's an active, committed force, not a passive sentiment that just hopes for the best. And to further clarify how this force of love must be applied, Conversations with God offers this insight. You cannot take responsibility for how well another accepts your truth. You can only ensure how well it is communicated. And by how well, I don't mean merely how clearly. I mean how lovingly, how compassionately, how sensitively, how courageously, and how completely. This highlights that even in its demanding aspect, this revolutionary love must be applied with careful, intentional compassion. It's about being both firm in truth and gentle in delivery, understanding that the goal is healing, not further division. 2. Baldwin's searing critique of organized religion.
Right. Moving into Baldwin's searing critique of organized religion, his personal experience with the church forms an absolutely crucial part of his argument. You can't separate the two. He recounts his time as a young minister, describing it as the most frightening time of my life and quite the most dishonest. Wow. He notes that his resulting hysteria lent great passion to my sermons for a while. This isn't just an intellectual observation. This is a deeply personal confession that sets the stage for his broader critique of how faith was being practiced in America. He lived it.
So he wasn't just observing from afar. He was in it, a first-hand witness and participant, deeply involved. And he describes leveraging his youth, becoming a bigger drawing card than his father, using this ruthlessly to break his hold over him. But he later realized he had immobilized myself and had escaped from nothing whatever. This really speaks to a deep internal conflict, a kind of self-deception within the church itself, even within him at that time. What was the core of that disillusionment for him?
It's a profound insight into how institutions, even religious ones, can become stages for personal ego and unresolved conflict rather than genuine spiritual growth. It happens, right? This personal account reveals a deep cynicism about the motivations and authenticity within the church, even his own actions as a young minister. That honesty is brutal. The hysteria driving his sermons speaks to a performative rather than genuine spiritual connection. He admits to a degree of dishonesty in his own actions, mirroring a deeper societal malaise he observed within the institution. He saw how the church, even for himself, could become a stage for ego and unresolved personal conflict, rather than a space for true spiritual liberation. He poses this central question to a minister about the very purpose of salvation. But what was the point, the purpose of my salvation, if it did not permit me to behave with love toward others, no matter how they behave toward me? That's the crux of it.
It's right at the heart.
It does.
Yeah.
And it's a spiritual indictment of a Christianity that, in his view, often prioritized personal salvation or adherence to dogma over active, universal love and compassion. Get your ticket punched, but ignore your neighbor. He then makes a crucial observation. It probably occurred to me around this time that the vision people hold of the world to come is but a reflection, with predictable, wishful distortions of the world in which they live, unquote. This insight suggests that instead of truly transforming individuals and society towards a higher ideal, the church often merely legitimizes existing prejudices and power structures by projecting them onto the divine, creating a heaven that conveniently mirrors earthly hierarchies.
Yeah, making God in their own image, essentially. And Baldwin doesn't pull any punches when discussing Christianity's role in the broader world, connecting it directly to power dynamics and historical oppression. He recounts a black Muslim minister's searing song, "The white man's heaven," sings a black Muslim minister, "is the black man's hell." That's a stark, undeniable truth for many, reflecting a profound betrayal of Christian ideals. How does Baldwin elaborate on this connection between faith and power?
He takes that potent line and just runs with it, expanding on it meticulously. He highlights Christianity's unmitigated arrogance and cruelty in the realm of power, that is politics, and in the realm of morals. He notes its spiritual duty of liberating the infidels, often concerned more deeply about the soul than it is about the body, to which fact the flesh and the corpses of countless infidels bears witness. This isn't just rhetoric. This is a scathing indictment of the historical record, pointing to the immense suffering caused by religious justifications for conquest. It's brutal history.
Yeah, hard to argue with that.
And he argues that the spreading of the gospel was an absolutely indispensable justification for the planting of the flag, meaning evangelism was often a precursor or companion to colonization, hand in glove. The church, he continues, sanctified and rejoiced in the conquests of the flag and encouraged the belief that Western well-being was proof of the favor of God. Prosperity gospel, anyone. God, he asserts, going north and rising on the wings of power, had become white. He's exposing how a faith system became warped to serve earthly power and racial hierarchy, ultimately betraying its own spiritual core.
Wow, that's a powerful deconstruction of how Christian faith, particularly in America and the West, became so deeply intertwined with colonial power and racial hierarchy. Baldwin is exposing how religious narratives were weaponized to justify immense cruelty, creating a kind of moral schizophrenia within Western society where immense suffering could be rationalized under the guise of piety. It's a stark contrast to what C.S. Lewis describes as putting on Christ, which he frames as a process of killing the old natural self in you and replacing it with the kind of self he has, becoming a new little Christ. Baldwin suggests that American Christianity, as often practiced, frequently did the opposite, reinforcing the old natural self and its desire for power and control rather than embodying true spiritual transformation. Think about the top 7 Catholic classics, which similarly calls for humility, stating that it behooveth us to bear with one another, to comfort one another, to help, instruct, admonish one another. This is a direct contradiction to the self-serving, conquering spirit Baldwin observed. He's essentially saying that the church, in its pursuit of worldly power, lost its soul, abandoning its foundational principles of love and humility.
Absolutely. But it's important to note, and this shows his intellectual honesty, that Baldwin doesn't spare the Nation of Islam from his critique either, even though he profoundly acknowledges their indictment of white America is justified by experience. He gets their anger. He describes a dinner table conversation where he certainly had no evidence to give them that would outweigh Elijah's authority or the evidence of their own lives or the reality of the streets outside.
Yeah.
He understands the undeniable validity of their anger and their pain, which he himself shared. He connects with their righteous indignation against white hypocrisy and oppression. He felt it too.
Right, he felt that pull. He observes that for them, everything else stretching back throughout recorded time was merely a history of those exceptions who had tried to change the world and had failed. A bleak view. He then questions, was this true? Had they failed? How much depended on the point of view? He's wrestling with it. He ultimately identifies a certain category of exceptions never failed to make the world worse. That category precisely for whom power is more real than love. That's the key distinction. And in a moment of unsettling empathy, he realizes, in the eeriest way possible, what white people must go through at a dinner table when they are trying to prove that Negroes are not subhuman. He's seeing the mirror image of prejudice, the same dehumanizing impulse, just directed in a different way. Chilling.
Exactly. Chilling is the word. This is a crucial pivot point in his argument. Baldwin recognizes the dangerous trap of simply reversing the power dynamic and replacing one form of hatred with another, even if fueled by understandable grievance and a history of profound suffering. It's a trap. He sees how the pursuit of power over love can corrupt any movement, regardless of its initial noble aims, ultimately mirroring the very systems it seeks to overthrow. What's truly fascinating here is how he identifies the common root of this corruption, making power more real than love. That's where the spiritual battle lies for him. This speaks powerfully to the conversations with God concept that there are no rotten apples. There are only people who disagree with your point of view on things, people who construct a different model of the world. Makot. No persons do anything inappropriate given their model of the world. Now that's a challenging idea.
Very challenging.
And the source then adds, rather starkly, I'm sorry to say that's exactly the attitude which starts wars. Baldwin highlights how the Nation of Islam, despite its valid grievances and profound insights into white hypocrisy, risked falling into a similar judgmental and divisive model of the world that could perpetuate conflict and hatred rather than truly transcending it with a love that seeks universal liberation. It wasn't the answer either for him.
And this realization, this recognition of the dangerous potential for hate to become self-perpetuating, leads to one of Baldwin's most poignant and truly provocative questions, one that continues to resonate today, pushing us all to examine our own goals. Do I really want to be integrated into a burning house?
It's not just a rhetorical question, is it? It's a profound challenge to the very idea of what progress means if it doesn't address the spiritual rot at the core. It absolutely is a profound challenge. It stops you in your tracks. With that question, he critiques the fundamental assumption of white intrinsic value and the expectation for Black people to just, accept and adopt white standards. Assimilate. This, he argues, is rooted in the white man's profound desire not to be judged by those who are not white, not to be seen as he is, and at the same time, a vast amount of the white anguish is rooted in the white man's equally profound need to be seen as he is, to be released from the tyranny of his mirror. Such complex psychology there.
That paradox, needing to hide and needing to be seen.
Exactly. The burning house metaphor questions the very goal of integration if it means joining a morally compromised, self-deceived society. He's asking us if the goal is merely to gain access to the white world or to transform the foundations of that world itself, which is it. It forces us to ask what kind of society we are truly striving to create and whether the proposed solutions genuinely address the root spiritual sickness, the deep pathologies of identity that he so eloquently uncovers. Are we just rearranging deck chairs?
And what he calls the tyranny of his mirror. That's this inability of white Americans to see themselves truly, right? To see their own projections, their own fears and longings reflected on the black people. It's like they're trapped looking at a distorted image of themselves, unable to break free.
It reminds me very much of the principles found in radical acceptance, about letting go of self-perception and not clinging to a solid self, just letting go.
That resonates.
The difficulty for white Americans to divest themselves of the notion that they are in possession of some intrinsic value that black people lack. It's a profound failure to look beyond the external, the superficial mirror of societal constructs, to a deeper shared humanity. This isn't just about political rights. This speaks to the immense spiritual work required for authentic societal change. It's an internal battle against ego and illusion as much as an external fight for justice. You have to do the inner work. 3. The spiritual roots of social justice. Towards revolutionary love. Absolutely. And what's truly fascinating here is how Baldwin's analysis consistently points to this crucial inner battle that both individuals and the nation must wage. It's unavoidable. He says, love takes off the mask that we fear we cannot live without and know we cannot live within. That line just gives me chills. These masks, these false identities and comfortable illusions are precisely what prevent genuine connection and perpetuate injustice. We hide behind them.
That quote is so profound because it highlights that the struggle involves confronting one's own identity and the projections we place on others. It's deeply personal. Baldwin specifically notes that white Americans project their unadmitted and apparently to him unspeakable private fears and longings onto the Negro. Plow. It's a powerful insight into the psychological underpinnings of racism, revealing it as a form of self-delusion, a way to avoid facing oneself. He then argues that the only way he can be released from the Negro's tyrannical power over him is to consent, in effect, to become black himself, to become a part of that suffering. This is a truly radical proposition. What does he mean by that, really?
Yeah, it sounds shocking, doesn't it? And of course, that statement isn't about literal racial change. That's not the point. It's a call for a profound spiritual and empathetic identification with the oppressed, a radical breaking down of self-imposed barriers, shattering the categories. It's an act of vulnerability and courage that directly confronts the tyranny of the mirror we discussed earlier, the self-deception that allows one to maintain a false sense of self by defining another as inferior. It's about truly understanding and internalizing the suffering of the other as one's own, not as an academic exercise, but as a felt reality. You have to feel it.
Okay, empathy on a radical level.
Exactly. This resonates deeply with Siddhartha's journey in Hermann Hesse's Siddhartha. Remember his struggle. Siddhartha spends years seeking to learn about the self, the purpose and essence of which I sought to learn. It was the self I wanted to free myself from, which I sought to overcome. But I was not able to overcome it, could only deceive it, could only flee from it, only hide from it. He keeps running into himself. He eventually realizes there is no thing in this world I know less about than about me, about Siddhartha. This mirrors the challenge Baldwin presents, to confront the true self, stripped of projections and societal definitions, and to embrace the unknown territory of genuine empathy and shared humanity. It's about shedding all those accumulated layers of self-definition that keep us isolated and afraid.
It really is a universal struggle, isn't it? And the deeper spiritual texts consistently emphasize the profound role of self-will and fear in perpetuating suffering and injustice, both individually and collectively. It's not just about individual bad actors, like you said, but about a systemic spiritual condition that Baldwin is diagnosing. It's in the water.
Absolutely. It's systemic. Think about Theologia Germanica, that profound work of Christian mysticism from, the 14th century? Anonymous author. It states very clearly that all thought of self, all self-seeking, self-will, be utterly lost and surrendered and given over to God. Just let go of the I. It clarifies that all self-will is sin, and there is no sin but what springeth therefrom. Self-will is the root. It asserts, whosoever seeketh, loveth, and pursueth goodness as goodness, and for the sake of goodness he will find the highest good. Seeking goodness for its own sake, not for reward.
That's a high bar.
It is. This profound spiritual truth suggests that individual and collective self-interest, rather than explicit malice, is often the root of injustice and suffering. The inability to surrender self-will, to prioritize a greater good over one's own comfort or perceived status, creates the masks Baldwin speaks of, preventing genuine connection and perpetuating division. Conversations with God further asserts that fear is king of the underworld, and it rules our world by creating the distortions in our knowledge. Fear distorts everything. Fear creates the whole world of injustice and emotional drama, the whole nightmare that billions of people are living in. Fear is the engine of the nightmare. This directly links fear to the creation of injustice and reinforces Baldwin's idea that white Americans' fear of losing their identity, their fixed star status, drives their perpetuation of racism. Brené Brown's extensive work on shame resilience also reminds us that as long as we care about connection, the fear of disconnection will always be a powerful force in our lives, and the pain caused by shame will always be real. We need connection. This primal fear of disconnection, of not being good enough without the other being less than, fuels the racial divide that Baldwin so sharply dissects. It's a fundamental human struggle played out on a societal stage, where our deepest insecurities become externalized as prejudice.
And tackling that requires enormous courage.
Enormous. This inner work, this confrontation with self-will and fear, demands profound courage from everyone involved. It's not for the faint of heart, as they say. Rollo May, in The Courage to Create, speaks of the need to fight the actual, as contrasted to the ideal gods of our society, the god of conformism, as well as the gods of apathy, material success, and exploitative power. We worship false gods. These idols are the very structures and beliefs that Baldwin critiques as holding America captive to its racial delusions. May also notes that to live into the future means to leap into the unknown, and this requires a degree of courage for which there is no immediate precedent. You have to jump without a net.
That's spot on. Baldwin's call for a new America, one transformed by truth and love, is precisely this kind of leap into the unknown. It's terrifying but necessary. It challenges deeply entrenched societal idols built on fear and self-interest, challenging us to imagine a future not defined by the past. The spiritual struggle, then, is to find the inner fortitude to break free from these powerful false deities that dictate our collective behavior and perceptions. It's about more than just incremental change. It's about a radical shift in values and priorities, a reorientation of our collective soul. Amanda Palmer, in her more contemporary reflections, has a declaration that captures this same revolutionary spirit. We didn't just want to gain entrance, we wanted to smash the door down completely.
Yeah, I love that.
This isn't about merely adapting to oppressive structures, but dismantling them to create a fundamentally different space, a new kind of house, rather than just finding a seat at a flawed, burning table. Build something new. So if we're talking about this kind of profound shift, this revolutionary spirit, how does Baldwin define the love that can bring it about? Because it's clearly not the Hallmark card version. He makes it clear that this revolutionary love is not merely in the personal sense, but as a state of being or a state of grace, not in the infantile American sense of being made happy, but in the tough and universal sense of quest and daring and growth. It's far more demanding than a fleeting emotion. It sounds like a spiritual discipline, really.
It absolutely is a spiritual discipline. That's the perfect way to put it. This definition elevates love beyond mere sentimentality or romantic notions to an active, transformative force that requires continuous effort, vulnerability, and a willingness to confront discomfort and truth. You have to keep showing up. It contrasts sharply with a passive or conditional love that seeks only its own comfort or happiness. I love you if. No. This is a love that is earned through struggle, not given freely without effort. It implies a dynamic, evolving relationship with oneself, others, and reality itself. It's alive. Erich Fromm's classic, The Art of Loving, helps differentiate this. He criticizes the initial experience of falling in love, which is by its very nature not lasting, often leading to antagonism, their disappointments, their mutual boredom, once the initial rush fades. We've all seen that. And the honeymoon ends. Exactly. Instead, true love, Fromm argues, is a permanent state of being in love, or, as we might better say, of standing in love, which requires commitment, growth, and sustained effort. You choose to stand in it. This aligns perfectly with Baldwin's tough and universal sense of quest and daring and growth. It's about building something enduring through conscious, difficult, and courageous effort, rather than passively enjoying a temporary state. It takes work.
That makes so much sense. Standing in love versus falling in love.
Right. And this concept of revolutionary love is also deeply echoed in diverse spiritual traditions that emphasize interconnectedness and active compassion. It proves it's not a uniquely Baldwinian idea, but a universal spiritual truth that keeps surfacing. Return to Love highlights that our needs are not separate. If we contribute to another person's pain, it will always come back to haunt us. Karma, essentially. It calls for commitment to the attainment of the conditions of peace for everyone involved. Peace for everyone. This emphasizes that love is not just an emotion, but a principle of action and an awareness of shared destiny. Causing pain to others ultimately harms oneself. It's inescapable, making social justice a profound form of self-preservation and enlightened self-interest. Our well-being is inextricably linked to the well-being of others. We sink or swim together.
That's a powerful and often overlooked truth, that our well-being is intrinsically linked to the well-being of others, whether we acknowledge it or not. It's just reality. The Bhagavad Gita, the ancient Hindu scripture, lists qualities of a transcendental nature that include mercy towards all living entities, nonviolence, and freedom from envy, advocating for purified activities, which it calls sadhakara. For those unfamiliar with the term, sadhakara essentially means right conduct, actions driven by goodness and virtue.
Conduct, yes.
These are not passive virtues, but active stances of compassion and non-harming that, when embodied, create peace. The profound internal cost of neglecting this compassionate action is vividly illustrated in The Way of a Pilgrim through the prince's story. Remember that one?
Vaguely, refresh my memory.
This prince was haunted by apparitions of those he had wronged, experiencing the torments of hell before it had even left his body. Pretty intense. This powerfully underscores the truth that if we contribute to another person's pain, it will always come back to haunt us. It's a stark reminder that our actions reverberate both in the world and within our own souls, demanding a shift towards active, compassionate love.
That's a vivid illustration. And moving deeper, this essence of revolutionary love requires profound humility and an abandonment of self-interest. It's about truly getting out of one's own way to connect, isn't it? Ego death, almost.
Yeah, letting go of the self. St. Catherine of Siena, from the top 7 Catholic classics, speaks of stripping away faculties and affections, leaving the understanding dark, the will dry, the memory empty, to introduce the spiritual form of the Spirit, which is the union of love, a kind of emptiness for love to enter. She emphasizes that the most essential thing is that we should love God without any motive of self-interest, and that it is by humility that the Lord allows himself to be conquered. Humility is key. This requires one to not think you merit these favors and consolations of the Lord.
Yeah.
No spiritual scorekeeping.
Exactly. This radical self-emptying or detachment from egoic desires and perceived merits is absolutely necessary for pure, unconditional love. It's a spiritual stripping away of everything that isn't essential, a purging of ego to embrace true connection. It's a very challenging path, requiring constant self-awareness and letting go.
It's like shedding all the superficial layers and even our own spiritual aspirations to get to the bare core of pure connection. The Cloud of Unknowing, another profound work of Christian mysticism, similarly promotes a blind stirring of love unto God for himself, prioritizing it even over contemplation or beholding of all the angels or saints in heaven.
Wow, even over seeing angels.
Right. This suggests that direct, unadorned love, unmediated by elaborate spiritual experiences or egoic aspirations, is the highest form of spiritual connection. Just love itself. This echoes Baldwin's rejection of superficial religious practice in favor of a deeper, more demanding spiritual reality, one that is found in authentic connection and radical self-honesty, rather than in outward displays or self-serving piety. It's a call to move beyond mere beliefs to actual being, a collective shift in consciousness, healing the soul of a nation.
Right. And if we follow Baldwin's vision through to its logical conclusion, the culmination of this intense individual and collective spiritual struggle is a transformed collective consciousness. It's not just individual enlightenment, it's moving towards unity and interconnectedness. It's about a whole new way of seeing and being in the world, a radical reimagining of what society can be. It's a paradigm shift.
That sounds like a truly universal and expansive vision, far beyond mere political agreements or treaties. It's deeper. Black Elk's vision, as recorded in Black Elk Speaks, provides a powerful ancient image of this transformed consciousness. It's beautiful. He saw that the sacred hoop of my people was one of many hoops that made one circle, wide as daylight and as starlight. And in the center grew one mighty flowering tree to shelter all the children of one mother and one father. And I saw that it was holy, one tree, one family.
Just gorgeous imagery.
Isn't it? He also states, It is the story of all life that is holy and is good to tell, and of us two-legged sharing in it with the four-leggeds and the wings of the air and all green things, for these are children of one mother, and their father is one spirit. This is a vision that transcends narrow identities, tribe, race, nation.
Absolutely. This vision beautifully transcends tribal, national, or racial boundaries, offering a blueprint for a truly integrated, harmonious existence, one rooted in the profound recognition of shared origins and sacredness. This directly counters the racial divisions Baldwin laments by asserting a fundamental interconnectedness of all beings. It's the antidote. It's not just about humans, but about all life sharing in one spirit, recognizing the web of life we're all part of.
Robin Wall Kimmerer's Braiding Sweetgrass further reinforces this with its emphasis on reciprocity, doesn't it?
Yes, the giveaway. Right. Gifts from the earth or from each other establish a particular relationship, an obligation of sorts to give, to receive, and to reciprocate. This highlights a worldview based on mutual giving and receiving, which is absolutely essential for repairing broken societal relationships and fostering genuine healing, moving away from systems of extraction and domination. It's about understanding that our very survival and flourishing depend on these reciprocal relationships, not on hierarchical power or taking more than we give.
So this is a beautiful and ambitious spiritual vision. But how does it actually translate into the political and social sphere? Because governments exist, laws are made. We live in that world too. Conversations with God offers an interesting and perhaps controversial perspective on the role of governance and societal change. It suggests that the inner transformation must precede the outer.
It does offer a unique take. It states, governments are the people's conscience, outspoken. It is through governments that people seek, hope, and determine to correct the ills of society. So it acknowledges the legitimate and important role of government in articulating collective aspirations and attempts at justice. It's not anti-government. However, it also cautions, quite pointedly, you cannot legislate morality. You cannot mandate equality. You can pass a law, but you can't change hearts by force. The text asserts that what is needed is a shift of collective consciousness, not an enforcer of collective conscience. Big difference. Behavior must spring from beingness, must be a true reflection of who you are. This implies that true, lasting social change cannot be merely imposed by law or external force, but must arise from a transformed collective heart, from a genuine internal shift across the entire population. Laws can set boundaries, but they can't compel true compassion or dismantle deeply ingrained prejudices. That comes from within. It even goes so far as to suggest that the money saved from building defense systems and attack weapons could feed your hungry, clothe your needy, house your poor. The causes of crime would be lost forever.
That's a truly radical thought, linking defense spending directly to social welfare and inner peace. It flips priorities completely.
It really does. It implies that if we address the root causes of suffering, poverty, inequality, despair, the need for coercive measures diminishes dramatically. Less need for police and prisons if people's basic needs are met and they feel connected. This perspective directly addresses Baldwin's call for America to accept ourselves as we are. We might bring new life to the Western achievements and transform them. It's not about abandoning governance, but about ensuring it reflects a higher collective consciousness, a deeper understanding of human needs and interconnectedness. The divine conspiracy continued explicitly links this to Christian leadership, interestingly. It advocates for moral servant leaders who engage in prophetic witness and position future leaders in arenas of influence throughout every aspect of society, ensuring the common goods are available for all. This represents an engaged, transformative religious practice that Baldwin might well endorse, as it aligns spiritual growth with tangible social justice outcomes, demanding that leaders serve the well-being of all, not just a select few or their own self-interest.
So it's about bringing that inner transformation into the halls of power, into the systems themselves.
Precisely. And ultimately, this spiritual struggle for social justice demands a constant state of awareness and engaged presence from each individual. It requires us to be truly awake, not sleepwalking through life. Joseph Campbell, in The Power of Myth, pinpoints what he calls the unpardonable sin. You know what it is.
Tell me.
Was the sin of inadvertence, of not being alert, not quite awake, just not paying attention. He challenges us to ask ourselves, how should we say no to brutality, to stupidity, to vulgarity, to thoughtlessness? It requires constant vigilance.
That sin of inadvertence.
Yeah.
Wow, that is precisely the complacency, the comfortable slumber, and the self-deception that Baldwin argues allows racial injustice to persist. It's so easy to just tune out. It's the blissful ignorance that prevents us from seeing the burning house for what it is, and our own role in its combustion, even if passive. To heal the soul of a nation, individuals must wake up to reality, confront their own complicity, even if it's just through inaction or silence, and actively choose love over fear, engagement over apathy. It's a continuous, conscious effort to stay present and responsive to the suffering around us, to not look away when it gets uncomfortable.
Exactly. Don't look away.
Baldwin himself points out that the American Negro has the great advantage of having never believed that collection of myths to which white Americans cling,
Yeah.
because they couldn't afford to. And they knew about white Americans what parents, or anyway, mothers, know about their children. That intimate, often painful observation.
The kind of painful clarity.
This awareness, born of suffering and forced observation, provides a crucial perspective for those who need to wake up. The path to being released from the tyranny of his mirror is to stop being inadvertent, to stop living in denial, and to engage with truth, no matter how uncomfortable or shattering it might be to one's preconceived notions of self and society. It's about being fully present in a challenging reality, not escaping into fantasy. Well, this deep dive into the fire next time has really shown us that James Baldwin's vision is as relevant today, maybe even more so, than it was when he wrote it. He lays bare the deep spiritual wounds beneath racial division, urging us to understand that social justice isn't merely a political or legal battle, but a profound struggle for the soul, both individual and national. His work is a call to profound self-examination for all of us, a mirror held up to the American psyche, and is not always a flattering reflection.
Not at all. Baldwin's challenge to American Christianity and the Nation of Islam underscores that true liberation and unity require more than just rigid dogma or reactive anger. Those are dead ends for him. It demands that revolutionary love we talked about, a tough and universal sense of quest and daring and growth that strips away masks, confronts fear, and seeks goodness for its own sake. It's a call to move beyond merely falling in love with comfortable illusions, to standing in love with a difficult, transforming truth, one that requires continuous engagement, courage, and a willingness to evolve, to change from the inside out.
So as we wrap up, let's leave you with Baldwin's haunting question. Do I really want to be integrated into a burning house? What would it truly mean for you and for us as a society to extinguish the flames of that house, not with denial or just more water, but with the transforming fire of authentic, courageous love? What masks might we need to shed to truly embrace that challenge, and what will we discover about ourselves and about the true soul of this nation once they are finally gone? Something to really sit with.